Today we're here to discuss a topic that we are very familiar with, which is traveling in Florida and the Caribbean during hurricane season.
And for those of you who watched our Moving to Florida video from a few weeks back, you may have noticed that we left out one key topic, and that topic is hurricanes. Now the reason we left it out is because we had planned on creating a video entirely about hurricanes shortly thereafter.
But then one of the worst hurricanes to ever hit Florida threatened our entire state, and it left a trail of destruction in its path. Now you're probably already aware that we are referring to Hurricane Ian.
And while Ian did cause some inconveniences in our lives, such as having to shift around some travel plans and prepare for a hurricane, that was nothing compared to the residents of Southwest Florida who were devastated by the hurricane. So we wanted to thank all of you who did watch our Hurricane Ian related content and who donated to the Florida Relief Fund.
Just by watching those videos, you've helped to generate nearly $350 that has been donated to that charity. None of us know when the next big hurricane will hit Florida or the Caribbean, but we do know that it's only a matter of time.
And the big question is, should that prevent you from planning travels to these areas during hurricane season? And in this video, we're going to share some of our personal experiences and knowledge to help you to make that decision for yourself.
We're going to start with some of the potential benefits of traveling to Florida and the Caribbean during hurricane season.
And the first of those benefits is one that's near and dear to me, and that is saving money. Now, especially since I quit my job a while back, I'm constantly looking for ways to save us money, and our favorite way to do exactly that is by booking our travels during hurricane season.
I will say though, even before Skylar quit his job, we were traveling during hurricane season pretty much ever since we moved to Florida. Whether we were going to other areas of Florida, booking a cruise, or like this year visiting the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico.
Now a great example of that is a trip we just went on a couple of weeks ago to the Dominican Republic. We booked a 880 square foot suite for 5 nights in Punta Cana at a 4-star all-inclusive resort for just $138 per night.
And that is not per person, but for both of us per night.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity, I did look to see what a similar stay would cost, not during hurricane season, and during January of 2023, the cheapest I could find it for was $200 per night, and in May of 2023, the cheapest price I could find was around $190 per night. So over the course of 5 days, we're talking up to $300 or more in cost savings.
Now another area you can find major cost savings when traveling during hurricane season is with your airfare. Now for this video, we are using an example of traveling from Chicago to Tampa because Tampa is the closest major airport to us. Now in mid-October, we could find round-trip flights for as low as $78. And surprisingly, we could find similar prices still in January of 2023, but whenever we started looking in May of 2023, those prices really increased. I think the cheapest we could find were around $222 round trip per person. So if you're traveling with a family or just with a large group of people, that cost savings can really add up fast.
Now another spot where you're likely to find some cost savings by booking during hurricane season is on your accommodations right here in Florida. Now whether it's a hotel or resort, Airbnb or a VRBO, you're likely going to save some money by booking during hurricane season. Now we're going to use the Rumfish Beach Resort in St. Pete Beach as an example because we stayed there during hurricane season last year. And if you want to book a night there right now in mid-October, you can do so for as little as $172 per night. Now we did look further ahead into January and May of next year, and those rates go up considerably. I believe the lowest rate we could find in January was $240 per night, and in May that rate went up to $251 per night.
Now there are other potential benefits to traveling during hurricane season beyond just that cost savings, and the next couple are some of my favorites. The first one being the water temperature. Not coincidentally, prime hurricane season is when the waters in the Gulf, Atlantic, and also the Caribbean are at their warmest. So for example, the water around St. Pete Beach tends to be around 85 degrees in September, which is also when hurricane activity is at its highest. So if your dream vacation involves swimming in really warm water, that's definitely something to consider. Now, my other favorite benefit of traveling during hurricane season has to be the incredible sunsets. Now, from our experiences living in Florida and traveling during hurricane season, around that time is when we have seen the most vivid and gorgeous beach sunsets. I don't know why that is, so if anybody has a scientific explanation for that, please leave it in the comments.
Now, one more benefit that's another huge one for me is the lack of crowds during hurricane season. Now, whether it's flying, visiting a resort, going on a cruise, or just going to a Florida beach town, we found the least amount of crowds at all of those places during hurricane season. And if you're like me and really enjoy your space when you're on vacation, then this is definitely a benefit that you should not overlook.
Before we move on to our next topic, if you've traveled during hurricane season and have any other benefits to add to this list, then go ahead and leave them in the comments below.
And while we have covered the benefits, there are also some major risks associated with traveling during hurricane season, and we're going to cover those right now.
So let's talk about what can go wrong. We're going to start with cancellations, whether it's flights, accommodations, special activities, or tours that you have booked. All of those can be in jeopardy if the area that you're planning on visiting is impacted by a hurricane before or during your planned trip.
Yeah, and we experienced that firsthand just a couple of weeks ago in relation to both Hurricanes Ian and Fiona. So a couple of weeks before we were scheduled to visit Puerto Rico, Hurricane Fiona blew through. And while it was only a Category 1 hurricane, it dropped a lot of rain, caused a lot of flooding, and also had a huge impact on the island's power grid. The vast majority of the island was without power, so we had to adjust our travel plans to make sure that we'd only be visiting portions of the island that had power restored at the time of our visit.
Not only did Hurricane Fiona impact Puerto Rico, but it also hit the Dominican Republic as a Category 1 hurricane. And the resort that we booked did experience some significant damage. And because of how we booked it, we were not able to cancel and get our money back. So we did not know how this was going to impact our stay there.
Yeah, and just when we thought we got everything figured out with Hurricane Fiona, then we found out about another storm brewing in the Caribbean, which ended up being Hurricane Ian. Now, they were initially projecting Ian to hit Tampa St. Pete head on, so we were preparing for a major hurricane. Now, as many of you probably know, it did end up hitting quite a ways south of Tampa St. Pete, and we did have pretty minimal impact here, but it did result in the Orlando airport being shut down, so we did have to delay the initial portion of our trip by a couple of days.
Now, thankfully, the Dominican portion of our trip was only minimally impacted by Hurricane Fiona, but we will be sharing more about our experience in the Dominican Republic and also in Puerto Rico. So if you're interested in seeing more of those, make sure to subscribe and turn the notifications on.
And while we do feel extremely lucky that we were able to go on any vacation at all, I do have to admit it was quite a bit of work and stress having to rebook all of those flights and accommodations.
Now, even if your trip to Florida or the Caribbean isn't canceled, you still can be impacted if your destination is hit by a hurricane during your trip. Now, your accommodation, it may be required to evacuate, or it's also possible that you might not be allowed to leave for a safety precaution. And if there's flooding on the roads or if the airports are closed, you might not be able to get home for a while.
Now, whether you have to modify, cut short, or cancel your vacation plans completely as a result of a hurricane, you're likely going to be out a significant amount of time and money, not to mention the disappointment that can come along with your vacation plans being ruined.
But thankfully, there are some things that you can do to mitigate those risks, so we're going to talk about those next. Now, the first option is an obvious one, and that is to purchase travel insurance that would cover trip cancellation or trip interruption due to a hurricane.
Yeah, and we typically do not purchase travel insurance because our situation allows us to be quite a bit more flexible than most people, and we do also take some other precautions that we'll talk about. But if you do decide that purchasing travel insurance is the right decision for your vacation, we would recommend Travel Insurance Master.
Now, that website actually compares plans from different insurance companies. So for your particular trip, it could help you decide what plan is best for you. So if you're interested in that, we'll make sure to leave a link to that in the description below.
Now let's talk about some of the precautions that we do take. And the first one is booking accommodations that do allow for cancellation with full refund. And for hotels, you generally do have the option to pay a premium that will then allow you to cancel with full refund, often I think up to about 48 hours prior to your trip. And in our opinion, this premium is definitely worth it, especially during hurricane season. Now Airbnbs work a little bit differently, but you can find certain Airbnbs that do allow you to cancel with full refund, often up to about 48 hours prior to your trip as well.
Another thing we like to do is to book our flights during hurricane season, either with an airline that doesn't charge a change or cancellation fee, or through our JetBlue credit card and our JetBlue points. Because with our JetBlue points, we can make changes or even cancel a flight the day of, and we just get all those points back.
And the final precaution that we take is with rental cars. We always make sure to book only rental cars that require payment on the day of pickup. So that way, if your trip gets canceled and you have to cancel your rental car reservation, even on the day of the reservation, you won't be out any money.
And that leads us to the question that you're all wanting to know the answer to, and that is it worth it?
And obviously the answer to that question is gonna vary from person to person, but for us, it's a definite yes. Now, as Jamie did mention a little bit ago, we have traveled a lot during hurricane season over the years. And up until that trip a couple of weeks ago, we've actually had very minimal impact on our trips. The only ones I can think of are a couple of cruises where our itineraries did need to get adjusted.
Yeah, and even with the trip from a couple of weeks ago where we did have to cancel and rebook a lot of things, it was a lot of added stress and it also took you a lot of time to do that. But even with that whole experience, I think we'll continue to book during hurricane season.
Everyone has to make that decision for themselves based on their own situation. For us, we go on several trips every year in association with our channel, and we also both have pretty flexible work situations, so if we do have to reschedule our travel plans, we can generally do so pretty easily.
Now, for example, if you're in a situation where you're planning a vacation maybe once every year or once every few years, and the idea of a canceled trip is absolutely devastating, then traveling during hurricane season may be too risky and might not be a good option.
Yeah, probably not. And also, if you're only traveling like once or twice a year, there's a good chance that the budget aspect just isn't as big of an issue, and having your vacation potentially canceled due to a hurricane is probably not worth the cost savings.
But ultimately, you have to make the decision if it's worth the risk. And we hope that the information and experiences that we've shared today does help you make that decision.
Now, if you're someone who's not only considering traveling to Florida, but also potentially moving to Florida, we have another video for you, and you can watch that by clicking here right now.
Thanks for watching.